So welcome to our Operating a Cricket Club webinar. As obviously the ground rules are on here. If you have got a question at any point, please use the chat function. That's been monitored by Steve Gass this evening, so he will interrupt myself or our other presenter tonight, Scott Chappell, at any point if it's relevant. But we've also got a dedicated section at the end of the meeting to go through any questions which might come through which haven't been picked up at any point with the presentation. So just moving on. So tonight's content, the first part is we're going to cover what makes a good club. And that's where you're going to get your thinking caps on. And very shortly, you're going to be put into a breakout room with 3 or 4 other volunteers from different cricket clubs. And we just want you at that point to have a little discussion about what makes a good club. And then you're going to have an opportunity to graffiti our screen with lots of different things that you've come up with in your breakout rooms. Then I'm going to pass over to Scott, who's going to go through governance. Sounds quite a dry topic, but there's some really good stuff within governance, which actually all cricket clubs should have in place. And by having the right governance in place, they're better for it and they're more resilient, and it can really help them in the long term. Scott is also going to do a very brief slide on finance. Then he will hand back to me and we will be discussing development planning. And development planning again, we're going to check you back in some breakout rooms to have some discussions. And then we will be doing a Q&A with John Bendel. So John Bendel, I won't steal his thunder, but he's works for the RFU, but is also a club volunteer and has got lots of experience in club development planning. So we'll use his knowledge and expertise in that field to chat through different things about development planning, and then we'll just have a little look at some yearly tasks which go on within cricket clubs. So without further ado, what makes a good cricket club? So all being well, we tested this yesterday, we're going to put you now into some breakout rooms. There'll be 3 or 4 other people, and within that we just would like you to talk for 4 or 5 minutes. We will give you a warning when it's up about what makes a good cricket club. Okay, so what makes a good cricket club? Share your thoughts and ideas, and then when you come out of the breakout room, we will give you permission with the annotate tool to write all over this screen different things which make a good cricket club. So I'm just about to pop you into some breakout rooms. So hopefully within your breakout rooms you had some good discussion about what makes a good club. Hopefully, it depends on what it looks like for your Zoom account, but either at the top or the bottom you should find your toolbar for Zoom, and along the toolbar hopefully on it will have an annotate tool. It might also be under the more options, the 3 dots, and what we would like you to do is to very quickly, using the annotate tool and using text, just start typing what makes a good club anywhere on the screen. Hopefully it will all work. Oh, brilliant, Jake. That's superb. So Jake's got it. If you struggle with the annotate tool, you can also use the chat box and Steve will throw some of those ideas onto the screen as well. There's some good ones coming in through the chat as well, which I'll read through in a minute. Yeah, really good stuff, everyone. Got about a minute left. Super. So good job, everyone. You can stop annotating now from there. Steve, I wonder if you're able to unmute yourself and just read through some of the stuff which has come through the chat box as well.
Yep, that's fine, Matt. I'll just go through some of the ones that have popped in. So we've had organised, inclusive, community and friendly. And tied into that, keeping safe, good facilities, strong leadership on and off the field, and a good support network of volunteers, good social life, community involvement and being inclusive. Make sure you can spread the workload, working to a plan or having a plan, strong support, good people, and welcoming to potential new members, and being organised.
Perfect. Cheers, Steve. So very similar to a lot of things which you've put on the screen. So community comes up an awful lot. Facilities is mentioned a lot. Good volunteer base. Spreading the workload of volunteers. Being welcoming and diverse. Inclusive. Friendly, welcoming. Some real key themes coming through here. Let me just clear the screen and we'll move on to the next slide. So pretty much everything which you've all listed there on the screen or typed into the chat box will fit into this club development model. So there are many different models which are out there, but this is one which Club Matters use an awful lot through a lot of their stuff, which is one of Sport England's programs. So either they fit into social, environmental, economical. So when we're talking about social, that's ultimately about having a clear vision, good understanding of the management of the club and its members. The activities underpin meet the members' needs. The leadership of the club is represented of all their different groups they may have. They listen, they're open, they're welcoming to the community, and ultimately it's a good place to be. I think we all have been to clubs where you go there and you feel it's a real good place to be, and I think that's something we really want to stress with any club, and it being good, being welcoming in a place that people want to spend time with. That also links into environmental. So it's accessible, it's welcoming to all. It meets the requirements of its membership. It's cost effective, it's well run, it's well presented, it's clean, it's tidy. People want to be there, it's not a burden. It's accepting of everyone. And then more on the economic and governance, which Scott will go through in more detail, is that they are compliant. They've got policies and procedures in place. They're financially well run. They cater for all needs, again, with what they offer. So when I share the slides for this, I will share a little bit more detail where you can really dig in and to look at some of the key traits which fit for each of these areas. But without further ado, and thank you all for participating so well with that, you'll get another opportunity to have some more discussion in a minute. I'm now going to pass you over to Scott, who's going to go through some governance with you now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. So as Matt said, we're just going to spend a little bit of time looking at governance. And governance basically underpins your club. It's based around having the right people, policies and procedures in place. And as a club, this will enable you to make the right decisions, which is going to kind of protect the future of your club and really help you move the club forwards. So thinking around the people element of your club and your club committees, there are 4 roles that as a minimum you need to have on your committee, and that would be a chair, a secretary, a treasurer, and a safeguarding officer. There are lots of other roles that you can have as well. There's a kind of a list there of some examples, but that's not an exclusive list. It's whatever works for your club. But there's kind of 2 key things with your committee. One is making sure that you have people on your committee that represent your club and the community as a whole. So for example, if you've got a women and girls section, if you have a youth section, if you have a big social membership, making sure that they're represented on the committee is key. And then also making sure that you've got a really effective committee as well. So is there a range of skills on your committee? Is everyone that sits on it adding value to it, and you don't kind of just have people sitting on it for the sake of it? And also there's kind of other ways that you can bring in more volunteers to your club as well. So a lot of people might not want the kind of tie of sitting on a committee, but they really want to get involved in the club and help with little projects. So having subcommittees enables you to widen that volunteer workforce and kind of have more doers helping the club move forwards. Ultimately, your committee is going to represent your club, but it's still key to make sure that the members of your club have a say in what helps and what moves that club forwards as well. So that constant dialogue between the committee and the members and people of the club is really, really key. All right, there we go. So we're just going to look at a few examples of some of the key factors of what governance really looks like. So the first one is making sure that your constitution is fit for purpose, and it's one that can kind of get lost and left behind. But actually, if you've not looked at it for a while, actually get it out and have a look at it. And is it fit for purpose for your club? Does it make sense? And is it what the club are following? And also your club has a clear purpose, so everyone can pull in the same direction, and that it's open and accessible as well. Your committee meets regularly. All those meetings are recorded, your minutes are taken, and then that's sent out to your membership as well, so that it's an open and transparent club. Any conflicts of interest are recognised and they're managed as well, and kind of to help with this, 3 of those people on the committee need to make sure that they aren't related and not living together. And then, as we mentioned a minute ago, when you're looking at who sits on the committee, make sure you've got that range of skills and you're representing all of those, kind of the membership of your club in your local area as well. And then again, which is something that you guys I'm sure will all do, is that there's those regular elections. So whether it's at your yearly AGMs, those officers elected or re-elected, but it's also an open opportunity for anyone to be able to stand for election as well. And then there's something to think about as well, is actually how long do those people sit on the committee, and is there a time limit, just to help kind of keep moving the club forwards and bringing in fresh ideas. You'll need a bank account with 2 independent signatures, and this just makes sure your club is protected. And then finally, your annual accounts are prepared, and then someone independent of that person that prepares them looks at them and makes sure everything's above board. And then again, they're made available to the members, that transparent and open policy, and they can question and kind of ask anything that they may want to know about how the money is spent. So touch briefly on kind of club policies and procedures. So if these are in place and the club are following them, it just helps protect you if anything goes wrong. So those things up on screen at the moment, they're kind of what we look at as a bare minimum for clubs to have. We mentioned about the constitution, things like GDPR are a legal requirement, but all of these things are good to have in place, but also as working documents. So it's not something that kind of we tick off a box and say we've done that and that gets put away for however many years. It's something that you kind of review relatively regularly, just to make sure they're fit for purpose, they're updated and they're relevant, and will help the club if anything goes wrong. There we go. Sorry, I went too long there. Safeguarding. We all understand the importance of safeguarding, so much so that there's a separate webinar for this, so we won't touch on it too much now, but the details of the next webinar for this are up on the screen there. And then when you get these slides, there's also a couple of links and some templates there that will help you and hopefully give you a few ideas as well. And then finally, just touching on finance briefly, I think if COVID has taught us anything this year, it's actually that kind of good financial planning is really key. So identifying what you might need and setting those budgets and plans for both in the short term and the long term of anything that you think might come up. And this just helps you with any issues that may arise in the future. And then along with the actual planning and the budget setting is actually making sure you constantly manage them as well. So keeping those records up to date, regularly reviewing the position that the club's in, and again, linking back to making it open and transparent as well, so everyone's aware of the situation. And also then just some really key things of making sure you're not spending money that you don't have. You've got money in the bank, but also you've got reserves for kind of future plans or any unforeseen things that may crop up. So for example, this year, having your bar and your clubhouse closed for the majority of the season and missing out on that income. It might be halfway through the season, a piece of machinery breaks down and you've got to buy a new one, and suddenly that's a cost you hadn't accounted for. Or if you know that your artificial wicket needs replacing in a few years' time, it's making sure that you've kind of got that money in the bank, or you're on the way to making sure it is, so that that won't be an issue as and when it arises. And then finally, to kind of help with all of that, is think about how you're going to generate that income. So where does that money come from, and how are we going to keep the club moving forwards or cover the costs that we need to? And then there's just a few resources there that will help you with some of that as well. So that was a bit of a whistle stop tour. There'll be some more information that will come out in the slides as well, but I'll pass back to Matt now.
Thanks, Scott. So obviously a little bit of a whistle stop tour there on governance. All the link, when we circulate the presentation, everything which is underlined is a hyperlink, so it will take you to template documents, model constitutions, and different documents which is out there for you. So there'll be plenty of stuff for you to go away and look at in more depth away from here, because some of the topics, if we went into major detail, we'd be here all night, and actually that's not what we want to achieve here. So the next part, I'm going to put you back into some breakout rooms. So we are going, with this time I want you to discuss development planning. So 3 parts to this. What is a development plan? Why do you need a development plan? Who's involved in the development plan? I'll just put you back into your rooms. So feel free to add stuff on there. Some good stuff coming in. Brilliant stuff. About 30 more seconds. Whoever's written I can't spell, don't worry about that at all. My spelling is not the best either. So do not panic about that at all. Super stuff. Steve, are you able to unmute yourself again and read through some of the things that should come through the chat box, please?
Yeah, so we've had some good ones in here. So we've got similar to on the screen, but we've got realistic aims, something that's aspirational. We've got something that is robust and yet flexible. It helps with short-term and long-term planning. It's regularly reviewed. It's got a wide cohort of views and opinions are sought to help form it. Something that's issued to members, I guess, to have their input. Again, make sure that the plan is open to all members. Push deadlines out if needed. So just a flavour of some of the things in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. So really complements what's been written on the screen. So a lot of people saying that it's visions, it's goals, a clear time frame of when things are going to be delivered. Lots of people about saying it's why we keep trying to keep the club moving forward. Everyone being involved. So some really good stuff here. I'll just clear that before we go into our discussion with John. Just going to throw up 3 different quotes relating to development planning, and for me, I think they're all relevant in their own way. So the one I like the most, it's a live document which is representative of its membership needs, wants, which is worked through and reviewed regularly. I think that encapsulates what a development plan is really well. But without further ado, we're going to now move on, and hopefully he's still on the call and he hasn't disappeared anywhere. But now hopefully you'll be able to see him as well. But welcome to John Bendall, and thanks for your time, giving up your time this evening to help talk about your experiences with development planning. So John, I will hand over to you to allow you to introduce yourself and your background, and then I'll ask you 4 very simple questions, if that's all right.
No problem, Matt. Evening, everybody. Yeah, as Matt said, John Bendall. I've worked in sports development for the last 18 years, which seems an awful long time. 16 of those for England Rugby, and I hasten to add, not in the performance department after last Saturday's show at Twickenham. So I've had 3 various roles. I've worked as a community rugby coach, supporting clubs, schools and colleges, and then quickly moved into a rugby development officer role. So similar to Matt's role, covering Somerset and Devon for 7 or 8 years. And my current role is I'm the area facility development manager, so managing the RFU investment across the Southwest for improvements in facilities. So within that range, I've seen a huge amount of club development plans from clubs of different sizes, different backgrounds, and with different ambitions. So Matt's kind of collared me tonight just to share some of those experiences. I guess from a volunteer hat on, although I work for England Rugby, my passion is really for cricket, or is for cricket wholeheartedly. And I'm a volunteer committee member at Wombat Cricket Club. And for those of you who are saying, where the hell is Wombat Cricket Club? Those of you may remember Bishop's Lydeard Cricket Club on the outskirts of Taunton.
Thanks, John. So my first question to you, very simply, why plan?
There's real simple answers, to be fair, and we've covered some ground in those tonight. But quite simply, I look at it as simple business planning. And when I sit with a volunteer club and a group of volunteers, and they say club development planning, we're just a rugby club or we're just a cricket club, I look at it slightly differently. I look at them as a business, and it's very simple business planning, just to ensure that they've got a robust thought process of where they are now and where they want to get to, but more importantly, how the building blocks to get to that place. So kind of irrelevant of the size of the operation or the business or the club, it's really important to plan. So use Wombat CC as an example. Historically, a 1 adult team club with no junior section, but we're in the throes of planning informally, moving to a more formal planning process. So from a rugby context, I could be sitting down like us as a cricket club, a 1 adult team club who want to build and improve their facilities. Equally, I could be sat there in front of a club with 450, 500 members with a junior section of 300 plus. So irrelevant of the size, it's really important, because what we want to ensure is that that club are there still here in 15 years time. And I'm not suggesting we have a development plan for 15 years, because that's just crazy, but basically to be sustainable. And sustainable is a bit of a fruity word, because you think around sustainability, do you mean efficiencies, energy efficiency, etc.? But in my language and our sports development language is being able to stand on your own 2 feet and being sustainable for the future. And quite simply, just to be better. And it can be as simple as that. We want to be better than we were last year, or we want to be better than we were 5 years ago. And it's around capturing the opportunity and seeing what the opportunity is there in front of you, but having that ambition just to want to be a bit better. And probably the final 2 points are really important. It ultimately unites your membership. It really brings the membership together and brings that collaboration piece of work. So you're not just driving 5, 6, 7 individuals along to get to an end point. You're actually bringing the whole membership with you. And the bit around the model you showed earlier, Matt, around the 3 spheres, it's really important to try and keep those 3 spheres all balanced, because if one of those becomes unbalanced, then you're going to topple over. So it's really important to, when you're planning, don't take your finger off the pulse on one of those areas. Look at all 3 and make sure they're all balanced and moving at the same pace. Because if, for example, let's take a cricket analogy, you're trying to develop All-Stars cricket or Dynamos cricket, and your welcoming environment is wrong, you can attract a lot of people to the club, but their first impression of a poor facility won't encourage them to come back. So you're working on the people element, but on equal terms, you've got to work on the environmental bit as well. So hopefully that answers your first question.
Thanks, John. So my next question, and you've mentioned it a few times, but who is involved in a development plan?
Again, from my experiences in rugby, the best example I can give you was probably back in 2010. I was working with Clumpton Rugby Club down in Devon, and we had a great tool as the RFU back in 2010. It was called the Whole Club Development Workshop. And it basically meant that we facilitated a workshop as professional staff, and they invited their membership to an evening that we facilitated on their behalf. And it was an hour and a half, 2 hours long. But basically we had committee members, players, women's and girls section, junior male players from kind of under 14s up, vice presidents, spectators, etc. So we had about 65 people in the room, and they basically talked about their club for the whole night for 2 hours. And the outcome of that was they had some notes, some thoughts, beliefs from their members that enabled them to move their club forward. So first point would be wide ranging. Open it right up to as many people as you can, because you're going to get far more views and you'll get more honest opinion rather than just 8, 9, 10 people's thoughts. In terms of how, or who and the how almost, use the formal meeting kind of agenda, so the AGMs, etc., where you can gain your members' thoughts and opinions. But often don't forget, in that environment, they might not want to be honest and they might not want to pipe up and share their thoughts. So have that informal opportunity, and it might just be informal conversations around the ground or around meetings, but it's really important to have those formal opportunities. One thing that the committee at Wombats have done this year is we've engaged with our members and our players through surveys. So we've had 2 surveys running, one around our playing offer, because those who don't know us, we don't play league cricket. We're a recreational cricket club that won't play league cricket. We play a Wednesday evening friendly T20 setup and 40 overs on a Sunday. We've got a full playing programme, and we had an opportunity this year. I say an opportunity. Our long-standing fixture secretary stood down. So we've had a new fixture secretary come in, and the first thing he wanted to do was understand whether our playing offer was right for our members. So we had some brilliant feedback about who we play, when we play, where we play. We wanted to make sure that we were playing the right people and offering the right playing opportunity for our members. So that was great. And then the second one we've done is about our warm and welcoming environment and what our members would like to see in our club and how they'd like to see our club develop. So those surveys have been really fruitful because the response has been really, really positive and really kind of high numbers. And then probably the final one, and I'm not saying this because I'm on a Somerset Cricket Board webinar, but from a rugby context as well, what we recognise is those clubs who engage with professional staff get the most out of it. So from a rugby context, they get a context as well. From a local perspective, when a club is first engaged with their development officer, they'll go on a little journey with that development team. And it's the same for us at Wombats CC. Is we never really engaged with Somerset Cricket Board until about 3 years ago. And there's 3 of us on this call tonight. And over the last couple of years, there's been 3 of us on most of your webinars and most of your face-to-face meetings. And I would just say the engagement bit is really important, because it's okay coming up with all your ideas around what you want to do and how you want to plan, but you're going to need some support to implement that plan. And so you might have got a great development plan, but you'll need support to deliver it. And I think that's where you would need to, I would recommend clubs really lean and engage and develop with the professional staff on the ground.
Perfect. Thanks, Ed, John. And I back that. We, as development staff, we're here to support, and I take no greater pleasure of when clubs contact me. They've got ambitions and they've got plans and they want to work with us to try and achieve them. So we are, to echo that, we are here to help. Sort of my next question is, so what are the common mistakes you see with a development plan?
Honestly, written by one person, so it's one person's ideas, they never get delivered. They'll just end in disaster. Conversely, a plan that's about 20 pages long and sits on the shelf, because again, you can't review that in any great context or quality. The ulterior motives I've scribbled down in my notes. A plan written just purely for accreditation or a funding bid, because again, that's quite, it's not watertight. It's written just for the purpose of gaining or jumping through a hoop. And that's a challenge. We've mentioned it earlier, not being used or reviewed by the management board or the committee. And I think that's really key. You could have I was just talking to Damien from Milton, that actually, it's like, oh yeah, we've got a 3 to 5 year plan. But if you have a length of plan that size, how can you ever almost review it with conciseness? Because you almost, from that 3-year plan, what I see some really good examples in rugby is where the club have lifted their annual plan from that longer term plan. So they may just have a 1-pager with 5, 6, 7 bullet points on across the areas of their development plan. And they sit there and say, we are going to deliver these 5 things this year, and we're going to review them bi-monthly, rather than wading through 20 pages of a 4-year development plan and trying to pick out the priorities. So the mistakes being not clear, not precise, and not quantifiable. So I'll give you an example, a classic one. When I first started many years ago with the RFU, I sat down with the rugby club and it said, attract new players. And I said, well, how many new players? Well, just more players. So does that mean 1 player, 2 players, 5 players, 10 players? Is that the under 7s, under 15s, or senior men or ladies? So be quantifiable, actually put a number to it and tell people what you're targeting. And then the biggest mistake is using a template that doesn't work for you. So that you mentioned it, you'll mention it in a minute, I'm sure. There are many, many templates that clubs can use and lift off various sports development websites. Just bastardize them, use them and make them work for you, because if they don't work for you, you're not going to use them. And I saw many clubs fall into the trap of just using a plan because they got told to use that plan. So that would be my kind of closing shot on that one.
Thanks, John. And then the last one. So what are the outputs of a development plan?
Again, from a Wombat perspective, over the last 3 years, we've seen some significant developments. So the outputs, so we've got an informal plan, but the outputs have been quite colossal, if I'm honest. And the chairman and secretary on the call as well, and is probably unrecognisable where we come from in the last 3 years. So you certainly get more things done. You bring more people with you, and the togetherness is really, really important. And that's what we're working really, really hard at the club at the moment, around bringing people together, because it's their club and they've been involved in it for many, many years. And a lot of them have got some great ideas. So just on Monday night, we had our AGM, and we got 2 new volunteers to look at fundraising internally about events and socials. And that's brilliant for us because they're both long-standing members as well. And it just ensures a direction of travel. You know where you want to get to. It might not be grand, and for us it's about surviving and making sure that we've got a beautiful cricket ground on the foot of the Quantock Hills that everyone goes, oh, Wombat Cricket Club, that's a really nice place to play, they're really great people. So it's around the direction of travel. And then we've got a great analogy, and I've used this for many, many years. It's and I don't mind if people steal it and take this back to your clubs, but getting the right people on the bus, but more importantly, getting them sat in the right seat on that bus. So bring them with you, but then once you've got them on the bus, you're going to have to manipulate, move them around, and find their skill set that meets the needs of the clubs the best. And I guess that's a great analogy, and I use it all the time. And our chairman, Dave, is caught on to it and he loves it as well. So, but it's irrelevant how big a club you are, because you're going to have people that you can lean on, and they'll have skill sets outside of cricket that will really benefit your club. So I guess just to summarise and really finalise is go wide. The wider you go, the more skill set you'll find, and the more things you'll get done.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And I think one thing for me which comes okay is a lot of what you've said resonates with what we see in cricket as well. So it's not just a cricket, this occurs and it happens in rugby. I know football clubs, it happens very similar. Steve, just before I let John off the hook completely, was there any questions which have come through at all which are relevant at this stage as you're monitoring the chat box?
Yeah, so just one, Matt. We had a question from Sarah, and it was just in relation to the survey that perhaps John did, but you can perhaps answer as well, Matt. In terms of the survey that you did for players, asking the questions. So what sort of questions were you asking when you surveyed the members that sort of fed into the development plan?
Yeah, so from memory, it was the fixture secretary did it and I completed it. It was, how many games a year do we play? Personally, how many do you play? What days of the week do you prefer to play? Do you prefer to play on a Wednesday or Sunday? Or do you play both? And that really is aiming at our 2020 kind of audience, or is it a 40 over a game you want to play? Start time on a Sunday. Do you want to finish earlier and get home earlier? And then more around venues and were there any new clubs that we could approach and play? So this year, I know the fixture secretary's picked up a couple of new clubs that we know have got a similar kind of ethos to us, because for us, it's all about the playing opportunity and making sure it fits with our ethos. So they were kind of some of the main ones, really. It wasn't exhaustive, but it was just, are we pitching it right for our members?
I think I'll just add to that as well, Sarah, with questions is actually trying to be really open with them and what you want to try and find out. So there's been a couple of examples that I know where clubs have done surveys and asked their membership, and one of the classic examples a few years ago was a club wondered why there wasn't many of the players' partners or parents staying to watch games, and they simply did a specific questionnaire for the mums and the wives and girlfriends at a club, and it was very simple. One came back, you didn't stock gin and prosecco at the bar, and the second was the toilets are manky. They're horrible. They're not clean. They're not very welcoming. So it was almost like a really easy win. Right, we'll get our bar stock correct, and we will make sure that we refurb our toilets and give them a lick of paint and make them more welcoming. And then that club had far more females at their club. And on the back of that, they've now set up a women and girls section as well at their club. So by just tweaking what they did and asking the question, being really open and honest, they found out some really key information there.
Matt, if I can just quickly jump in on that note, on our facility survey, we had a really kind of a bit of a random question. What have you seen at another cricket club that could work for our club? And some of the responses were brilliant and really simple. So the big feedback was more benches around the ground, and someone just said hanging baskets. So it's a real cosmetic thing, but that was what a couple of the responses we had. So there's no guilt in trying to nick ideas from other people either.
Yeah, no, thank you there, John. John, I will leave you to it. Thank you ever so much for taking time out this evening to share your experience and knowledge, and I hope that you all found that useful. I'm just going to go over just a couple of real quick slides here, just to reiterate some of the things which John has said and when you consider, but also when we share the slides, I will share some bullet points of things which of notes which John has said, but you obviously see the recording as well. So let's move on. So just things to consider. So who should be involved? Should be very high. Where your club is now is something that John mentioned. So really finding out where you are at this current point. Where do you want your club to go in the future? What are your aims and objectives? What content needs to be in your plan? Use and review your plan regularly. So just some key points there to pick up on. And next on how people get involved. So this is a question I actually get asked quite a lot. So how do we get different inputs from people? So we run annual general meetings as clubs. So that is a formal way, but as John said, sometimes you don't actually get what you want. People don't always want to raise their head above the parapet in those ways. Something that I've seen a lot of clubs start to do is hold open committee meetings. So whilst they've got the committee, they welcome other people's. It's an open invite, so people can contribute in different things. They don't get a vote on anything, but actually they're welcome into the nuts and bolts and the running of the club. And I've seen clubs pick up more volunteers where they've seen actually this is not a bad thing to be involved with, and I value that my opinion's been thought after. Questionnaires that we've talked about them. If they're asking the right questions, you can find an awful lot out from your membership to make sure that you're doing the right thing for them, because that's really important that you're delivering what it is you need. But the informal discussions with club members and personnel, sometimes actually the best conversations are those ones you have in the bar after the game. And when you're socialising, it's very informal, that people might not feel as under pressure, and they will give you your opinion, so you can learn an awful lot about that. But also, actually, can you engage with your wider community? So is your facility used by other groups as well? So they might have some things which say, well, actually, if you did this, we'd use it even more, or we'd engage with you more. So just some things to think about there. There are some resources here, and there's a template that we've got, which is an adaptation of the ECB. There's a Sport England development plan template, but as John said, it's about finding a template and a format which works for your club. You might like some of our template, you might like some of the sports, and you can merge them together, but you will find something which is right for you. A couple of other tools that Sport England have got a development planning guide, which almost talks you through different stages and things which you can consider. And also through Sport England, through their Club Matters, a club improvement tool. So again, it sort of tries to link things together with your development plan from there. We're very near the end of this now, but just one thing that I've started to get asked a lot more as we get new volunteers into cricket clubs is around tasks and things which go on at a cricket club. So what we've done as a team is we've pulled together and we've grouped them almost of different tasks which happen, which a cricket club generally need to complete. It's not an extensive list, and it might not cover everything for your club, but actually what we want you to do is maybe have a little think about when you get new volunteers involved, and they may not know when things happen or what jobs might happen during the year, is can you have a bit of a checklist for your cricket club of when things happen and when they get done. So I'll just flick them up on there. So your end of season groundwork, NatWest Cricket Force general tidying and maintenance, like, so when you're going to do them, how are you going to do them, who's going to advertise them, for example, your AGM and your committee meetings, the financial planning, which Scott talked about, applying for grants, looking at your development planning, surveying members. As I said, this is not fully extensive. How are you going to collect membership and payments, ordering playing kit, sponsorship, social fundraising. You can see already there's an awful lot. So when do you need your league entries in? signing up for various programs, whether that's All Stars, Dynamos, or Women and Girls program, different tasks which go on. What's your winter coaching going to look like? What's your summer coaching going to look like? Volunteer reward and recognition, recruitment and training for volunteers, ensuring volunteers' qualifications are in date, promote yourself within the local community, organise fixtures if needed, managing your play cricket registration. As you can see, there's an awful lot of there, and there'll be an awful lot missing. But that's just to give you a flavour, and it might just help you as new people come into roles. Right, that could help you and be something that as a committee you could use along with your development plan about how you're going to deliver, or how just make sure, have we done our league entries, have we done this, have we done this, so things don't get missed. So it's just something to consider there. I'm going to just throw it open. Steve, are there any questions come in at any point? Any questions which need answering, Steve?
No, that was the only one, Matt, around membership feedback. So no questions. Good job
Perfect.
tonight.
So if there are any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to send me an email and we'll get back to you on to that. The last thing just want to flag up is we do have more webinars and events coming up. So on Monday is our Starting a Women and Girls section webinar, and there's still time to register for that. The week after, we've got how to develop a project, followed by a grant application and funding sources. They're both interlinked, and we've got presentations from the ECB staff and people from our local sports partnership at SASP. We've got coming up, and more details will be emailed about this tomorrow, is we've got a couple of ground events. So the Ground Association and launching new services, and a pre-season preparation webinar with Dr. Ian James from the ECB, one of the leading turf specialists in the country, and the Somerset head groundskeeper, Scott Hawkins. So it's a couple of good webinars. The one that Scott mentioned earlier about safeguarding people in cricket, we've got one on maximising use of play cricket at the end of March. And then Scott will be launching some exciting webinars for coaches next week. We've got some sessions booked in with Somerset head coach Jason Kerr, captain Tom Abel, and some leading specialists in the coaching field at the moment. So if there are any more questions or anything, please ask them now. But if not, I wish you all a very good rest of the evening, and hopefully we'll be moving more and more quickly to returning to play cricket and having a great summer ahead. But thank you for all your input and taking part this evening.